So I finally watched The Substance with my parents, as one does, and was struck by a lot of the, well, not just the body horror and the gore and the blood through my fingers, but the Buddhist themes throughout, especially regarding small scope, death and impermanence, absolutely, and the five aggregates. So the view of the transitory collection and the object of negation. And I will get into that. So the five aggregates being the object of negation, the eight worldly dharmas as well, and karma, the law of cause and effect. So the five aggregates are form, feeling, discrimination, or mental perception as it's sometimes translated, compositional factors, and consciousness, the mind. So, beginning with form. The body, the physical body that we cling to, modify, and in the substance literally replicate. Not that I want to see someone's spine experiencing that again. The entire film revolves around the perception of self through the body. Elizabeth faces the reality of aging in an industry that worships youth. So this is about death and impermanence, small scope. Her body is no longer seen as valuable, the form aggregate. The inciting incident is that she decides to undergo the procedure, as we know, creating a cloned version of her younger self in the form of Sue. I'm Sue. From a Buddhist perspective, this suffering is fueled by self-grasping, the belief that the body is her, and that's what she bases her whole self-worth around. Form is impermanent. The body ages, changes, and eventually dies. This is the case with all things. Her refusal to accept this leads her down a path of suffering, which, as we know, certainly doesn't end well, and takes quite a long time to get there as well. Like, I started this movie too late in the night, and we're all wondering by that final third what the heck was going on. And then Sue, the way the camera lingers on her perfect body, which I found so interesting in the behind the scenes fun facts, TV tropes, trivia aspect of it, that Margaret Qualley, of course, required those prosthetics to achieve that look, because it's literally unachievable. So it's not just the theme of the film, but it's baked into the actual production, which is madness. But very, very important and drills the point home, that's for sure. Feeling, the emotional weight of impermanence. Feeling is our emotional reaction to an experience. The notions around aging and self-worth, it's not just the possibility of losing a role. It's being seen as irrelevant and invisible in a society that doesn't value older women. It's the fear of aging itself. It's seen as a tragedy rather than just part of the process. From the moment you're born, you are dying. That's death and impermanence. That's small scope. From the moment you're born, you are dying. And yet, for women, this is seen as a negative thing rather than something to be celebrated. Like, to me, it's extraordinary. What a privilege to actually get to age. And so when she does see Sue, there is this mixture of longing and jealousy and despair for the perfect woman. And we are also complicit as the audience in being conditioned to see beauty as something youthful and fleeting. The internal audience in that final scene, the internal audience, as well as us watching from our seats on the screen with the pixels and everything going on, are forced to confront our own biases. Why is 50 seen as a bad thing. Why don't we celebrate it? Like, it's mad. It reminds me of Mrs. Doubtfire saying that she's a 60-year-old woman. Girl! Discrimination or mental perception. The good, the bad, and the judging mind. This is about how we categorize things as good, bad, indifferent, or neutral. The substance thrives on the constant judgment. It's the base of the film. We're constantly evaluating the beauty, success, and identity of the characters through this lens. Elizabeth sees her aging self as bad and her youthful self as good. Sue revels in praise, but crumbles literally when it is taken away, which will bring us to the Eight Worldly Dharmas a little bit later, so a sneak peek there. These judgments are empty. They're based on changeable causes and conditions, not intrinsic truth, yet we let them rule our lives. And the fourth, may the fourth be with you, is the compositional factors. Time is one of the compositional factors, and the illusion of control. These are the forces that shape our experiences, and as I said, time is a big one. The film structure mirrors itself, as we know. The opening sequence foreshadows the end. Time marches forward, perception shifts, and yet Elizabeth fights against the inevitable. The irony is that Sue herself is impermanent. The cloned, perfected version of Elizabeth starts to decay, as we know. We can picture very vividly after having watched it. She sought to escape aging and impermanence, yet that very thing comes for her in the end. Clinging to control is an illusion. You can try to slow the time down, manipulate your appearance, but eventually reality will catch up. Like that final scene, the blood, well, the ketchup on the star mirrors the blood on the star, and then she is a dying star in that final sequence. The fifth aggregate is consciousness, the mind itself, and within that, within its impure state, are the delusions. So the mind perceives reality, but we presently perceive these three primary delusions: ignorance, anger, and attachment. We're driven by those. Ignorance is the one that fuels everything. Ignorance is perceiving an independently real self and phenomena, the objects we engage with in the world. We don't see the interdependent nature of all things, whereas everything depends on something else. One cannot exist without the other. Through ignorance, Elizabeth and Sue see things as inherently real. They see the self, especially, as solid. They see its concrete existence. Through attachment, they certainly seek external validation. And through anger, they lash out at each other through self-mutilation, self-harm, self-hatred, whereby they do just leave their vessels on the cold, hard floor, Taylor Swift, for a week without care, when reality doesn't conform to those desires. And desirous attachment is a synonym. An enemy is synonymous as well, which leads to suffering, this constant, perpetual state each time. So I did mention earlier, little flashback sequence, that Sue especially is driven by the Eight Worldly Dharmas. Both of them, certainly, but Sue is a good character study for them. So the Eight Worldly Dharmas are gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disrepute, and wealth and poverty. Elizabeth's suffering is certainly tied to all eight. She is chasing fame, avoiding disrepute, clinging to praise, and fearing loss. But these are all just conditions coming and going as well. They cannot be grasped at. And then we, of course, have karma, the law of cause and effect. Karma is not a bitch. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. Karma is not whatever you think karma is. It's merely action. It is the law of cause and effect. Elizabeth's choices lead to consequences, but Sue and her disregard of the long-term effects of the substance leads to very deleterious effects, as we know. Actions have results, whether we acknowledge them or not. And they might not ripen in this life. This is for us, not Elizabeth and Sue. But they might not ripen in this life, but they will continue to snowball, get bigger, 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 such that however many lifetimes it takes, you will experience the effect similar to the cause. That is karma, the law of cause and effect. So my final thoughts, aside from the too much blood in that final third, was it made me self-reflect, certainly on the emptiness of the body. It hit very, very close to home. I had a few heavy-hearted moments about it. What you do now will have that implication on your future self. And to take care of yourself now. Because regardless of what may ripen, you don't know what you're doing right now. And aside from all the blood that my family was barely able to watch, beyond saturation point, as my parents remarked, was that despite the film wanting you to be horrified by the gore and the body horror and the existential dread, in reality, they're just pixels on a screen, which is very good to keep in mind when your tummy is churning and wanting to move upwards, move its contents upwards, is that they are just pixels on a screen, and the director will yell cut, the actors will go back to their lives, you'll go back to your life at the end of it. Everything is mere appearance. Our reality is illusory. The film is illusory. We are clinging to identities and to bodies and status and an independent sense of self. But in the end, it all is impermanent. It is small scope. The first stage of the lamb rim, death and impermanence. And we should accept that. So, don't take the substance and let go of the view of an inherently existent self. It was never solid to begin with. And perhaps remember Nagarjuna's line that because there are no phenomena that are not dependent arising, there are no phenomena that are not empty. In the end, everything is impermanent. Like dear Monstro, sweet lass that she is. 10 out of 10, hats off, flowers, commendations, etc. to the prosthetics team. You did an amazing, amazing job. I hope they got all the accolades and awards they could ever wish. Is still clinging to a perception of beauty. She chooses the face of Elizabeth. I remember thinking, oh my god, that's so nice. But she does choose Elizabeth's face because she sees her as beautiful. There's still the underlying notion of grasping at an inherently existent self. So as a remedy to that, to meditate on the emptiness nature of self and phenomena, to realize that death is definite, time of death uncertain, and at the time of death, nothing can go with you. All that can benefit is the Dharma, is your own bodhicitta, the enlightened mind of loving kindness for all sentient beings. So to shift the focus away from this self-grasping and tightening and perceiving the body as concrete and substantially real, to let go and think of all sentient beings, think of others more than yourself. Stop clinging to a self that was never real to begin with. Thank you for listening. This was good fun. It got me thinking a bit deeper. I shall wrap up soon and post this one as well. So Stick around, I'll do some lighter ones, but the video essays are very good because rather than just constantly consuming media, it gets me thinking from a Tibetan Buddhist lens, get to put some Dharma in action, get my little noggin working overtime as well. My mind, it'll test your head and your brain and your mind. Okay, see you soon.